You reach for your wallet a dozen times a day. You barely think about it. A card, a tap, a number changing on a screen. But the real answer to what money actually is far stranger than anything printed on a bill. You were taught a simple story. Before money, people bartered. A farmer traded wheat for a pair of shoes. A fisherman swapped fish for firewood. It was clumsy and inefficient. So eventually humans invented coins to fix the problem. Clean, logical, almost obvious. It is also, according to decades of anthropological research, mostly fiction. The Cambridge anthropologist Caroline Humphrey spent years searching for a single historical society that ran primarily on barter. She never found one. Not one economy in the archaeological or ethnographic record where strangers routinely swapped goods directly, item for item, as their main way of getting what they needed. The barter economy as a foundational stage of human history appears nowhere. It is a story economists told each other, not a story anthropologists ever found evidence for. So, if barter isn't where money came from, what is? The answer starts somewhere you wouldn't expect. It starts with memory. Picture a small village 10,000 years ago. You live near people you will see again tomorrow and the day after that for the rest of your life. When your neighbor needs grain and you have extra, you give it. You don't demand shoes in return on the spot. You remember that they owe you something. Someday, when your roof needs repair or your child gets sick, they remember too, and they help. This isn't a poetic guess. It is the core argument of anthropologist David Graeber, who spent years studying how early economies actually functioned. His research suggests that debt, not barter, came first. Obligation came first. Money came later as a way of measuring something that already existed between people. Think about what that means. Money didn't create trust between strangers. Trust between neighbors created the conditions money would later formalize. The ledger came before the coin. The memory came before the metal. Now here's where it gets stranger. If early economies ran on remembered debt, why did coins and currencies show up at all? The uncomfortable answer, according to Graeber's research, is war. Armies need to feed and pay soldiers who are far from home, among strangers who have no long-term relationship with them and no reason to trust a promise. You can't tell a hired soldier in a foreign land, "I'll remember what I owe you." He'll be gone tomorrow, possibly dead. So you hand him a coin instead, a physical object that carries trust inside it. So two strangers who will never see each other again can still make an even trade. Coined money, in other words, wasn't built for neighbors. It was built for strangers. It was built for war, for empire, for people who had no other reason to trust each other. That single shift changes everything about how you should think about a dollar bill. It isn't just a tool for convenience. It is a technology for trusting people you don't know. Which raises an unsettling question. What happens to a society once most of its relationships run through that kind of trust, instead of the older kind, the kind built on memory and repeated contact with the same people over a lifetime? There's a famous case that makes this even harder to unlearn. In 1991, the economist Milton Friedman wrote about a place called Yap, a small island in the Pacific. The people of Yap used enormous stone discs, some over 10 feet wide, as currency. Too heavy to move, most of these stones never left the spot where they were carved. When ownership changed hands, everyone in the community simply agreed, out loud, that the stone now belonged to someone else. The stone itself never moved an inch. Here is the part that should stop you. One of the most valuable stones on the island had never even been seen by living residents. It sank to the bottom of the ocean during transport generations earlier. Nobody had laid eyes on it in decades. And yet everyone still agreed it counted as wealth because everyone remembered the story of how it got there and who owned it. Sit with that for a second. A rock at the bottom of the sea, invisible, untouched, still functioning as money. Not because of what it was physically, because of what people collectively agreed to believe about it. Now compare that to the number sitting in your bank account. You cannot see it. You cannot hold it. Most of it exists as a digital entry, a shared agreement between you and a financial institution. And it works precisely because everyone involved treats that agreement as real. The sunken stone off the coast of Yap and the balance in your checking app are structurally doing the exact same job. A shared story, believed strongly enough that behaves like value. Doesn't that unsettle you a little? Money was never really about metal or paper or pixels. It was always about belief, held collectively, backed by memory and trust instead of anything physical. Gold worked as currency for centuries, not because gold does anything useful on its own, but because enough people across enough generations agreed it would hold its worth. The moment that shared belief cracks, so does the money. Empires have watched their currencies become worthless overnight, not because the paper changed, but because the belief did. This is where the economist Karl Polanyi's research becomes useful. Polanyi argued that markets and the money that fuels them were never separate from society, floating above it like some natural law of nature. They were embedded inside it, shaped by human institutions, culture, and power. Markets don't run themselves. People run them, and people decide, together, what counts as valuable. Take away the collective agreement, and the market has nothing left holding it up. So what does all of this mean for you, personally? Standing in line with your card in hand? It means the object in your wallet or the number on your screen is not really the thing you think it is. It's not a neutral tool humming along in the background of history. It's a fossil of a very specific human decision. A decision to trade memory-based trust between neighbors for object-based trust between strangers. A decision made thousands of years ago, mostly during wartime, that has quietly shaped nearly every transaction you've made since the day you were born. You didn't choose that system. Nobody alive today did. You simply inherited it, the same way you inherited language, or the calendar, or the idea that a week has 7 days. And yet you trust it completely, every single day, almost without thinking. That trust is not naive. It's actually one of the most remarkable things about being human. No other species on this planet cooperates through shared fictions the way people do. Chimpanzees don't hand each other symbolic tokens and agree they represent value. Wolves don't accept paper for meat. Only humans built an entire global system on a story everyone silently agreed to believe, and then kept believing, generation after generation, strong enough to move ships full of grain across oceans, and build cities out of nothing but promises. Here's the twist most people never consider. As physical cash disappears and more of your life moves into digital transactions, you're not entering some brand new era of money. You're moving even closer to the original idea. Object-based trust is slowly fading again. What's replacing it isn't barter, and it isn't paper. It's memory, ledgers, records, systems designed to remember what you're owed and what you owe, tracked automatically instead of held in a village elder's head. In a strange way, the future of money looks a lot like its true beginning. Less like a coin passed between strangers, more like a village remembering who helped whom, just now recorded by machines instead of by memory. So the next time you tap your card, without a second thought, remember what's actually happening underneath that simple motion. You're not just moving numbers around. You're participating in one of the oldest, strangest agreements humans have ever made together. One built less on gold and more on something far more fragile and far more powerful. You reach for your wallet a dozen times a day. But you're not really reaching for money. You're reaching for a story 10,000 years old, one that only works because you and everyone around you still choose to believe it.